ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call the Honorable Dr. Zati Akhtar Aziz, Governor of the Central Bank of Malaysia, His Excellency Khairat Kalimbitov, Governor of the National Bank of Kazakhstan, Mrs. Andrea Leadsom, Member of Parliament and Economic Secretary to the UK Treasury, Masood Ahmed, Director of Middle East and Central Asia Department of the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Hinai, Vice President Finance of Islamic Development Bank, and Mushtaq Parker, Editor of Islamic Banker magazine, to join us on the stage.
Yes, indeed. So you are allowed to come in.
Now please welcome the Honorable Dr. Zati Akhtar Aziz, Governor of the Central Bank of Malaysia, to give her special address.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my very great honor and pleasure to be here in Dubai at this World Islamic Economic Forum 2014 to speak at this dialogue session on the potential of the Sukuk market and its role in the economic development process and contributing towards financial stability. This recent decade has witnessed the accelerated development of the global Sukuk market. The global Sukuk market has now reached $270 billion outstanding and is evolving to become a distinct platform for fostering greater international economic and financial linkages. The success of the Sukuk market reflects its ability to meet the changing and differentiated demands of the modern economy, to develop innovative and cutting-edge structures and products, and to achieve such issuance at competitive pricing. The Sukuk market has drawn increasing interest from sovereigns, multilateral institutions, multinational and national corporations, both from developed and emerging economies, to finance investments in a wide range of economic activities and development projects. The geographical reach of the Sukuk market has also become more extensive, with the global Sukuk outstanding now being domiciled in more than 20 countries, while the investor base spans from Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. In addition to issuance in the international reserve currencies that include the US dollar, the British pound, and the euro, more recently in Malaysia has been the issuance of Sukuk in renminbi. For investors, the Sukuk offers the diversification into multiple asset classes and different techniques used to structure medium to long-term instruments. Given that the Sukuk is based on underlying assets, it discourages overexposure of the financing beyond the value of the underlying assets. Issuers are thus discouraged from leveraging in excess of the asset value. The prospect of over-indebtedness and its consequences on financial stability is reduced. There is also potential for direct participation of investors in the project, thereby granting investors beneficial ownership in the underlying assets, with the rights to receive a share of profits or rental income from the underlying assets of the Sukuk while taking the associated risks of such ownership. The sovereign Sukuk is generally the first inroad to Sharia-compliant funding in the capital market, enabling the creation of reference prices over time to which the private sector entities can benchmark their fundraising activities. Governments have, for the most part, remained the most active issuers in the history of the global Sukuk market, with sovereign issuance now accounting for more than 80% of the global Sukuk issuance. This recent few years has also seen a number of jurisdictions in developed economies strengthen their legal, regulatory and governance framework to facilitate such Sukuk issuance, and this is indeed a very encouraging development. Going forward, the financing requirements for economic development are envisaged to be massive, particularly for emerging and developing economies in the Asian and Middle Eastern regions that are seeking huge amounts of capital to fund new infrastructure and to support economic development. Given the sheer size of these projects, equity and government budgets cannot be the only source of financing for this next phase of economic growth and industrialization in our regions. The Sukuk market has become a potentially important new source of funding for such long-term projects. In the recent decade, a total of $95 billion of infrastructure Sukuk has been issued by more than 10 different countries. In Asia, it is estimated that a funding of $8.3 trillion is required until 2020 for infrastructure projects, while funding requirements in the Middle East are estimated to be $2 trillion over the same period. Developing economies in Africa have also already begun its entry into the Sukuk market for such infrastructure financing, with some having put in place the legal groundwork for such Sukuk issuance. However, low sovereign ratings have limited the ability of certain high-growth developing countries to source such funding, despite being rich in natural resources. Countries that are rich in natural resources may, however, pledge these resources for such issuance. Funding may thus be secured arising from the securitization of such assets, given the recourse to assets by investors. It provides the incentives for disciplined and appropriate governance of the management of these projects. Additionally, multilateral development banks may also facilitate this process by providing credit guarantees to these countries to reduce the financing costs and improve the quality of the Sukuk issuance. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to share Malaysia's experience in the development of the Sukuk market and in our Islamic finance marketplace. The Islamic capital market in Malaysia has been systematically developed to ensure accessibility while ensuring protection of investors and efficiency in the intermediation process. The initiatives to develop the market are also strongly backed by legal and Sharia framework, which further is supported by a robust financial infrastructure, including the settlement and bond information system that enables Malaysia to provide a complete Sukuk issuance and trading platform. Since the first Sukuk issuance in 1990 by multinational corporation, the Sukuk outstanding in Malaysia's marketplace is now $158 billion, and in 2002, the Malaysian government issued its first inaugural global sovereign Sukuk, and which became an international benchmark for the issuance of global sovereign Sukuk. The marketplace has now been liberalized to allow multilateral financial institutions, multinational and national corporations from other jurisdictions to issue both ringgit and non-ringgit denominated Sukuk in our market. And with increasing foreign investor participation in such issuances. The Sukuk market in Malaysia has been seen wide-ranging and innovative structures and a greater diversity in the type of maturity of the Sukuk. A landmark issuance of $750 exchangeable Sukuk Musyarakah in 2006 by Khazanah, the government's investment corporation, for the purpose of selling a stake in our telecommunications corporation. It marked the first issuance of its kind, incorporating full convertibility features common to conventional equity-linked transactions. A more notable issuance that was pioneering retail exchange-traded Sukuk to raise funds for a transportation project that allowed retail investors the opportunity to have direct access to Sukuk and thus a stake in massive infrastructure development of the country. In terms of maturity, the ringgit Sukuk market has seen issuance of maturities to 30 years, which has been well received by the market. And regular issuance with different maturities by the Malaysian government has also created a benchmark yield curve for the market as a reference. In complementing the Sukuk market as a source of funds raising, also has been explored by other funding channels to assist small and medium-scale enterprises, new growth industries, and entrepreneurs that have limited access to the Sukuk market. In an increasingly internationalized global financial marketplace that has generated cross-border flows, one of the requirements that as we advance forward is for more tradable cross-border Islamic financial instruments that can cater to the different profiling of investors' risk appetites. The issuance of short-term Sukuk by the International Islamic Liquidity Management Corporation, IILM, is a breakthrough in the innovation towards increasing cross-border liquidity flows that could potentially enhance financial stability and the efficient functioning of Islamic financial markets. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude my remarks. There is a clear indication of the growing relevance and importance of the Sukuk market, with a growing interest from both emerging and developed jurisdictions and the strategic approaches taken to diversify the funding sources through the Sukuk market. The overall direction and potential of the global Sukuk market are certainly well recognized, particularly in its role towards contributing to greater economic development. There is a significant potential for the Sukuk market in particular to fund infrastructure projects, and this is particularly relevant for the GCC, African and Asian regions. This would contribute towards building deeper and more liquid and efficient and effective global Sukuk markets. The dynamism of the Sukuk market also contributes towards strengthening financial stability and in facilitating the expansion of inter-regional investment flows. As we move towards increasing this internationalization of Islamic finance and thus towards greater global financial integration, it will contribute towards global growth process and financial stability that will be mutually reinforcing for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now please welcome His Excellency Kairat Kelimbitov, Governor of the National Bank of Kazakhstan, for his special address.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you on behalf of the National Bank of Kazakhstan at the session Dialogue on Sukuk Development on the 10th World Islamic Economic Forum. I would like to express my gratitude for the organization of this forum to the World Islamic Economic Forum Foundation. I do hope this event will be another driver, a constructive dialogue on Islamic economic development in the world. Moreover, it is worth noting that WIEF activity over the past 10 years, the WIEF has played a major role in the development and promotion of Islamic economy and finance in the world through identifying the main issues of the development and proposing ways of overcoming them. Before telling you about Islamic finance and Sukuk development in Kazakhstan, we should give a brief background on the current economic situation and environment. The GDP last year achieved $220 billion and average economic growth was about, last 5 years, about 5%. International reserve of the country exceeded $100 billion. We've got independence more than 20 years ago, and over the 2 decades we established a leading conventional financial hub in the region. And at the same time, we were very excited of the opportunity of development Islamic financing in Kazakhstan. Just recently, the governor Zeti mentioned about very impressive growth of Sukuk market in the world, and such a promising market was one of the main reasons why Kazakhstan in 2009 in addition to the traditional pattern, development of Islamic finance in the country. In 2010, in his annual address to the people, His Excellency President of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, in his speech, New Decade, New Economic Growth and New Opportunity, noted the need of becoming Kazakhstan, like Almaty, one of the top 10 financial centers in Asia and as a hub of Islamic finance in the region of Central Asia and CIS. With this in mind, National Bank of Kazakhstan and the other government bodies are actively working on the establishment of legal framework, development of Islamic finance infrastructure, as well as the increase of the level of awareness about this area among the population. In 2009 and further in 2011, Kazakhstan was the first in the region to adopt laws which make it possible to issue Islamic securities Sukuk and put them in circulation. Islamic lease certificates and Islamic participation certificates, issuance of the government Islamic securities, and expanding the list of the corporate issuers of the Islamic securities. Moreover, these laws provide opportunity to establish Islamic investment fund. Thus, it should be noted that currently Kazakhstan has a chance to become a regional platform for the issuance and circulation of the Islamic securities Sukuk for the Central Asia region and CIS. The government of the Republic of Kazakhstan has approved the roadmap of development of Islamic finance until 2020, whose implementation contributes to the creation of conditions for stable development of the Islamic financial services industry, creating a critical mass of issuers, investors, and market participants. In 2011, the National Bank of Kazakhstan was admitted to the Islamic Financial Service Board, IFSB, as an associated member. This enabled us to receive effective assistance for the development prudential standards for the Islamic Financial Organization of Kazakhstan. Moreover, it is next year that Kazakhstan, as the first country in the CIS and Central Asia, is going to host an IFSB summit. In this regard, I would like to invite you, dear guests, to participate in the 12th IFSB summit, which is organized by the IFSB in cooperation with the National Bank of Kazakhstan next year in Almaty. The summit will gather the world leading experts and financial institutions in the field of Islamic finance. I would also like to say that in the very near future, the National Bank of Kazakhstan is going to join the accounting and auditing organization for Islamic financial institutions and the international Islamic financial market in order to improve the legislation in the field of accounting and auditing of Islamic financial institutions, as well as introducing Islamic money market instruments to manage liquidity in the domestic Islamic financial system. In addition, it's necessary to mention that as a part of the ongoing efforts to further develop of Islamic financial sector and unlock the full potential of Islamic finance in facilitating economic development of Kazakhstan, the Islamic Development Bank is providing a technical assistance to the National Bank of Kazakhstan. Under this assistance, world-leading experts will be hired to further amend Kazakhstan's legislative framework. Taking in account all mentioned above, I would like to say that today Kazakhstan serves as a gate for penetration of Islamic finance to the region of Central Asia and CIS. Today, there are a number of Islamic financial institutions in Kazakhstan. This is the first Islamic bank, Al Hilal, and the first Islamic insurance company. In addition, in 2014, with participation of the ICD, Ijara leasing company was opened in Kazakhstan. In 2012, the National Bank of Kazakhstan issued all the necessary permits to the Development Bank of Kazakhstan for the issuance and selling of Sukuk, and in July 2012, the Development Bank of Kazakhstan became the first issuer in the region, which has successfully implemented the transaction of the issuance of Islamic bonds Sukuk al-Murabaha amounting to $76 million. 60% of this issue was distributed among foreign investors. Malaysian company RAM Rating Service has assigned the Development Bank of Kazakhstan AA2 ratings, allowing this Kazakhstani bank to position itself at the same level with RBS Berhad. In October this year, the Ministry of Finance of the Republic of Kazakhstan, after the break, placed the Eurobonds totaling $2.5 billion. Investors have shown a very high interest in Kazakhstan sovereign Eurobonds, as the total book claimed exceeded $11 billion. In this regard, and taking in account that we have all necessary laws and regulation, I think it is logically correct to use such a high investor interest in the sovereign securities of Kazakhstan to issue sovereign or quasi-sovereign Sukuk in the next year, as did the United Kingdom and Hong Kong. The global experience has shown that the lack of a well-developed bond markets may result in overdependence on financing from the banking sector, which in return may result in funding mismatch with some negative effect on financial stability. The bond market, especially Sukuk market, due to its nature, allows access to funding with appropriate maturities, thus avoiding the funding mismatches. The main feature of Sukuk is that its funding is designed to project financing, which has real economic benefits rather than the financing speculative activities. Thus, development of Sukuk market contributes to more durable financial stability. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a much room for discussion and big potential for Islamic economic development worldwide. I wish you all fruitful cooperation and effective discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency. Finally, please welcome Mrs. Andrea Leadsom, Member of Parliament and Economic Secretary to the UK Treasury, for her special address.
Good morning, Your Excellencies and distinguished guests. It's a huge pleasure to be here in Dubai this morning. The city has gone through an incredible transformation over the last 50 years. This transformation, which has been fueled by natural resources, tourism, retail, trade and finance, is nothing short of astounding. And I can tell you, you've even attracted my brother and his wife to come and live here. So congratulations for that. And it sends a very powerful message that the fast-growing financial powerhouses of today are increasingly located away from the traditional hubs of Western Europe and the United States. Nowhere is this more the case than in the world of Islamic finance, clearly demonstrated by the palpable ambition in this room. ambition to make the most of the opportunities offered by a market enjoying year-on-year growth of 40% since 2005, and which at the current rate of growth will exceed $2 trillion in assets by the end of this year. My position as the City Minister in the Government of the United Kingdom is simple. We are also ambitious. Our policy is one of open, willing engagement with fast-growing economies, such as those in the Islamic world. And the UK is not in competition with those economies. Our aim is to work together to grow this market throughout the world. And having listened to Governor Zeti just now and what she has helped to achieve in Malaysia, I can see what a long way the UK has still to go. But by maintaining and expanding our position as the Western hub for Islamic finance, I do believe that London can be proud in the world as a leading centre. We believe that the UK has a great deal to offer your fast-growing market. So today I will talk about the actions we are taking in the UK to make that a reality. My first point is that there are already several factors that make the UK a good place to do business in this area. Our time zone means that we sit at the centre of global capital markets. English is the global language of business. Our professional services industry has significant expertise in Islamic finance, including more than 25 law firms with Islamic specialist departments. We have world-class academic institutions offering specialised training courses and qualifications. And I'm delighted that just last year we set up 10 new Chevening scholarships for Islamic finance in the UK. And of course we benefit from a talented, highly educated, multilingual, multicultural workforce. My second point is that you should judge us by our actions. The UK has already put in place a suite of policies to help solidify the UK's position as a global partner and destination of choice for Islamic finance. This time last year, London hosted the first World Islamic Economic Forum outside of the Islamic world, a resounding success, with 1,800 political and business leaders from over 115 countries in attendance. We made a number of significant commitments then to make the UK a partner of choice for Islamic finance, and we have delivered on those commitments. We've created an Islamic index on the London Stock Exchange. We've seen the launch of the first Islamic insurance underwriting agency, Cobalt Underwriting. The London Market Group, which sits within Lloyd's of London, has also developed a trade body, the Islamic Insurance Association, to look specifically at developing UK expertise in Islamic insurance. We have continued work on setting up Islamic-compliant students and start-up loans. And 6 months ago, we had the inaugural meeting of the Global Islamic Finance and Investment Group, GIFIG, in London, that was chaired by Baroness Warsi. This group brings together premiers, ministers, CEOs of major Islamic banks, central bank governors and regulators, people who can make a real difference to the global landscape, to examine the key global opportunities and barriers facing Islamic finance. We've done this because the UK believes in this industry's great international future, and we will continue to work with you to help to develop it. But our landmark announcement at last year's WIEF was promising to be the first Western country to issue sovereign Sukuk. And in June this year, we delivered on that promise. We issued £200 million of sovereign Sukuk, and orders for the issuance totalled £2.3 billion. That's nearly 12 times oversubscribed. This was the culmination of years of hard work to create the right tax and regulatory environment, one which puts Islamic finance on a par with conventional finance, creating a level playing field for Islamic financial products. And I hope that this achievement inspires further issuances of Sukuk by corporates as the Islamic finance industry in the UK continues to expand. I would now like to talk a little bit about where I see the UK market developing and the opportunities that that means for you. One development we expect to see over the next quarter is the move into the Sukuk market by UK Export Finance, WIEF, which is the UK's export credit agency. Since the global financial crisis, UKEF's 100% guarantee product played a key role in supporting customers of Airbus aircraft and Rolls-Royce engines. A UKEF guaranteed Islamic Sukuk product is a natural step to extend the scope and appeal of this guarantee. UKEF expects to bring its first guaranteed Sukuk to market in the new year in support of an Airbus customer, the first Sukuk for an ECA-backed aviation transaction, and a significant step forward in UKEF's existing work with a wide range of airlines from the Islamic world. Like conventional capital markets guarantees, it will be available for use in a range of currencies to suit all customers. And our indications are that given the confidence the market has in both the strength of the UKEF guarantee and the principles of Sharia financing, its pricing would be consistent with the conventional capital markets product. Our ambition is that this Sukuk product will be rolled out to a range of other customers and sectors. The second area of significant development in the British market is and will continue to be infrastructure. The last few years have seen some flagship developments in the UK that have been funded or part funded by Islamic finance. To give just one example, Qatari Diar's investment in Chelsea Barracks represents the largest Islamic finance deal anywhere in Europe ever. And over the coming years, it is in infrastructure that the UK will be seeking significant further inward investment, which UK Trade and Investment will be explaining in our country investment programme tomorrow. In housing alone in the UK, we need to build hundreds of thousands more units per year than we're currently doing, creating enormous opportunities for Islamic banks. 6,600 of those units in the North West and the Midlands regions are coming from a £700 million investment by Gatehouse Bank, a fully Sharia-compliant bank. So my message to you is, over the coming years, I hope we will see billions worth of new investments from the Islamic world in a range of sectors in the UK, because it's good for us and good for you. So the third area I would like to touch on is Sharia-compliant facilities. The Bank of England is very well aware that Islamic banks face real difficulties in meeting their liquidity requirements with the currently limited range of options. Its existing facilities, which involve interest-bearing activity, are not, of course, Sharia compliant. So I'm pleased to confirm that the Bank of England will begin feasibility work next year on establishing a Sharia compliant facility. This will, I'm afraid, not be a quick process, but the emphasis must be on getting it right, and that means we are looking at a project for the medium term. Nevertheless, I hope that you will see this endeavour as recognition from the UK's central bank of the challenges Islamic banks face in their liquidity management requirements, and it's another British vote of confidence in bringing Islamic finance into the mainstream. Because Sukuk and the wider Islamic finance market will, I know, continue to flourish. And the United Kingdom is determined to continue working with you as you grow and expand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Leadsom. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now begin the first session, Dialogue on Sukuk Development and Financial Stability, moderated by Mushtaq Parker, editor of Islamic Banker magazine.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I start, I'd just like to thank the World Islamic Economic Forum and also the Dubai Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to moderate this session. Dubai always pulls the emotional strings because this is where it all began in 1975 with the establishment of Dubai Islamic Bank. And we are indebted to two remarkable leaders, Al-Marhoum Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, the then President of the United Arab Emirates and also the ruler of Abu Dhabi, and of course Al-Marhoum Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed Al Maktoum, the then ruler of Dubai, for their foresight and, dare I say, their courage for starting at that time, which was an experiment in Islamic finance. And look where we have come 30, 40 years since then. The cycle has come full circle. Present ruler of Dubai, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, has launched this initiative of Dubai as a global economy hub and also Dubai as an Islamic financial center with special emphasis on Dubai as a platform for Sukuk origination. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this it's very fitting for the 10th forum to be held in Dubai in that respect. The title, Sukuk Development and Financial Stability, is a very intriguing one. It conjures up two, especially in our space, two important aspects, as Sukuk development and, of course, financial stability. And financial stability is the hot topic, especially in the G20 agenda, agenda for regulatory reform. In fact, it was the G20 which mandated the International Monetary Fund and also the Financial Stability Forum, the vital task of restoring global financial stability, thus making the system more resilient. And just very briefly, the efforts encompass the enhancement and resilience of financial institutions, the ending of too big to fail institutions, transforming shadow banking into transparent and resilient market-based financing, and of course making the derivatives market safer, especially the OTC market. There's also the connectivity to the Basel III process framework, which is the cornerstone of resilience through its new capital and liquidity frameworks. And just one mention, I think when the liquidity coverage ratio standard was introduced, I think at the beginning of 2013, for the very first time there was reference to the Islamic finance market, especially for the inclusion of certain type of sukuk under the high liquidity, HQ, high quality liquidity assets. And I think the LCR came into effect this year, but I think it will be phased in by 2019. And I know there are some countries in the Muslim world that are working towards including sukuk in this HQLA universe. And I think the Basel process has left it up to individual regulators to decide which sukuk qualify in that respect. Of course, there's also the other area, the financial sector action plans initiated by the World Bank and IMF. And I think we will see some progress in that respect as well. I know the IFSB is developing core principles for this process, but I can confidently say that Malaysia so far is the only country which has had its FSAP, which included the Islamic finance sector. And I think at the insistence of Governor Zeti in that respect. Sukuk development, where shall I start? So I won't be too long on this because I know you want to hear the dialogue. We've seen some spectacular developments in 2014, especially by sovereign non-Muslim issuers. And I start with the UK, as Economic Secretary has alluded to, and followed by Hong Kong, South Africa, and Luxembourg. The one interesting thing is the Hong Kong Sukuk, a $1 billion issuance, which I think indicates the ambition of Hong Kong as a financial center and also as a platform. I I've had some discussions with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, and they assure me that this is not the end of the issue. There is a possibility that they may, it depends on the market demand conditions and, of course, their own public borrowing requirements. They're also very interestingly interested in developing a renminbi sukuk market, halal dim sum sukuk. And we've already had 2 issuances from Khazanah Nasional, the Malaysian Sovereign Wealth Fund, and Axiata, the mobile phone operator. So that is one area to watch. In terms of ambition, there have been some suggestion that, for instance, the UK, which is a very important player, both in terms of its historical relations with the Muslim world, could have been a bit more ambitious in their sukuk issuance. After all, the issue was oversubscribed 4 times, so some market players would have liked to see a little bit more ambition in perhaps upgrading it or upsizing it to 500 million or so. South Africa highlights that Africa is a new frontier for sukuk origination and also for Islamic finance. And once again, the South Africans are talking about local currency issuances, especially by state-owned utilities. Of course, there are huge drivers of sukuk, but there are also inhibitors. We've already heard about the statistics, but I think a word of caution that despite the fact that the sukuk market has proliferated tremendously, there are huge challenges, especially the 2 that stand out is the lack of market maker and also the lack of secondary trading and liquidity in the market in that respect. So without further ado, I'm going to follow this format. I'm going to ask the 2 discussants to make an opening statement, about 5 to 7 minutes, and then I will start, hopefully, a very interesting and robust dialogue. Our first discussant is Masood Ahmed, who's the director of the Middle East and Asia Department at the International Monetary Fund. He's a man of huge experience, LSE alumni, and spent time both at the World Bank in various capacities and also at the Department for International Development at the UK government, DFID. So I'm going to ask Masood Ahmed to make an opening statement, especially on the linkage between sukuk development and financial stability, and of course some of the other points raised. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mukhtar. Let me, first of all, thank the forum for inviting us for this opportunity. And at this point, we've had 3 very comprehensive perspectives that have been provided by Governor Zeti, by Governor Kalimbetov, and by the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, Economic Secretary of the Treasury in the UK. And I'd like to perhaps focus my remarks on 3 points, which have been brought up and I'd like to underscore. The first one is the issue of sukuk financing as a way of helping to deal with the infrastructure gap. And I want to focus on the infrastructure gap in this region because yesterday we released our regional economic outlook. And one thing that is clear is that if you look at the growth horizon for the next 5 years, the GCC countries are doing well. And despite the fall in oil prices, they have the resources to be able to continue with spending plans that are sensible and well calibrated. But if you look outside and look at the oil importing countries in the region, their growth prospects are quite limited. 3% or so growth just isn't tackling the unemployment challenge and providing opportunity and hope to their people. So one of the ways in which you can get growth up in those countries, both in the short term and by providing a better platform for the medium term, is by embarking on a concerted and much more assertive program of infrastructure development. Many people have looked at gaps in infrastructure in the region. We've done some work, others have done it, and all the analysis shows that there are large gaps on the one hand, and there are what people like to call shovel-ready projects. That is to say, projects that could be started relatively quickly, that would begin to address these gaps, and that would also provide jobs in the short term, and that could boost growth by between 1% and 2% a year in these countries. Now, to provide that financing, these countries don't necessarily have the resources themselves. They're already getting to the point where borrowing from domestic markets is getting harder, and development of Sukuk in these countries or to finance projects in these countries could be a very useful contribution to advancing that agenda. Second point I want to make is the one that you raised, which is the link between Sukuk development and financial stability. And of course, one dimension of that is the very nature of the instrument, because it's better linked with an underlying project. But beyond that also, I want to link it a little bit to this issue of liquidity that was raised, because one of the problems that we now see is that in many jurisdictions, sort of absence or inadequacy of Sharia-compliant securities is forcing many Islamic financial institutions to maintain relatively high levels of cash in terms of their liquid assets. And of course, this depresses profits in good times, but it also increases systemic risk in terms of crisis. And on central banks, it imposes a challenge of how to manage the excess liquidity of these institutions, level the playing field, and limit a bit of the segmentation between the Islamic financial institutions and conventional banks. And of course, again, here, increased Sukuk issuance could help alleviate these constraints and also help the banks to meet the Basel III requirements, both for capital and for high-quality liquid assets. This is the point that I think you just raised, Mukhtar, yourself. Final point I want to make is that it's very important as we go forward, to try and bring about more of a convergence between the Islamic finance industry and the broader financial sector regulatory institutions and framework on the one hand. And secondly, let's stop for a moment. And secondly, and secondly, it's also important to make the link between the Islamic finance industry and the macroeconomic management of economies. Because as we've seen, one of the lessons we drew from the 2008 and 9 crisis, that by underestimating the links between the financial sector and the real economy, what started off as a financial sector crisis in the United States turned out to become a real sector crisis, not just in the United States, but then spread across, because of linkages that we hadn't focused on, into the rest of the world. And it's very important that as the Islamic finance industry develops further, we strengthen that link into the macroeconomic management. And that is really the angle, if you like, the door through which the IMF as an institution has a contribution to play, because what our members are asking us to do is to help them make that connection and strengthen the linkages between not just the financial sector and the macro in general, but with the growing Islamic finance industry that they're now dealing with and encouraging, and the macroeconomic management in terms of identifying fiscal and financial sector risks early, in terms of addressing those risks in a preemptive way, and in terms of ensuring that the regulatory framework and the institutional framework for coordination is there to make sure that these risks are managed without stifling the development of an industry that caters to the demand and expectations of a growing number of people within those countries and beyond. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Masood. At this stage, I just would like to welcome the presence of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who is the Vice President and Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates and the ruler of Dubai. Your Highness, we thank you for attending this auspicious event. I would like now to call on our next discussant, Abdulaziz Al-Hinai, who is the Vice President for Islamic Development Bank in charge of finance. He's effectively in charge of the bank's resource mobilization program. So, Abdulaziz, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mushtaq. It's great to be in this great city of Dubai. I believe what we have been seeing in the past 12 months in Dubai is really a big achievement, in many of the issues that we were raising this morning, and definitely Dubai leadership is a doer in implementing its plans, whether for its own consumption or to offer it to the world. I believe having DIFC as a platform for our focus here, Sukuk is an area of proof success in the past years. Definitely the issue of Sukuk is an important issue, whether it's for development, infrastructure, financial stability, as has been shed light on. However, I believe the previous speakers, the two governors and the minister from the UK, shed light on the importance of Sukuk and as a market instrument. I would mainly focus on opportunities and challenges. And on the challenges, I would focus on three issues: organization, processes, and product. There is definitely a need to improve the organization, the existing institutions, and to create specialist organs. Example, settlement exchange for Sukuk, adjudication centers such as DIFC, compliance and rating agencies. Those are very important instruments in terms of organization. In terms of the processes, there is a need to improve efficiency. We need to improve and streamline the processes, develop universally acceptable credit benchmarks, perhaps an alternative to LIBOR that we use in the conventional world. In terms of the third product, we need to develop and standardize products, adhere to the common compliance rules, enhance secondary market liquidity, and provide hedging instruments for better risk management that incorporate the concept of risk sharing, because Islamic finance is about risk sharing. I would shed light on what IDB is doing. In addition to the efforts by the IFSP and IOFI on this regard, I believe IDB is very much continuing the efforts and to contribute by cooperating with its member countries. A good example is the reverse linkage program. We have been reverse linking good experiences from IDB member countries to IDB member countries. Definitely, the financial centers is a very good thing to reverse link. And those countries who have already have the experience, whether in Sukuk issuance or in creating the enabling environment, we want to move these experiences to the less advanced member countries of IDB. So IDB will continue to contribute. However, there are issues that need to be really taken into consideration. Issuing a sovereign Sukuk is a good thing, but I believe priority, especially in the less advanced IDB member countries, should be given to project-specific Sukuk rather than sovereign Sukuk, because sovereign Sukuk is always looked at as a debt instrument, whereas Islamic finance always encouraging productivity, and productivity can be seen on a project. A good example, why would a country go and issue a sovereign while there are very good bankable projects in the infrastructure. I will start by issuing for those projects, because the investors will see that there is an income-generating projects in the pipeline, and where his money is invested are on those projects. But for less developed countries, definitely that should be the start. This will also help reducing the cost to the issuer, because issuing debt looked at by the investor to refinance debt or to spend on subsidizing the economy, or subsidizing or putting it in the budget deficit, is definitely going to be costly. So I really think that effort should be devoted to infrastructure by pinpointing specific bankable projects and issue Sukuk for those projects. Again, a Sukuk should not be looked at as a debt, because the owner, the holder of a SUK, is a shareholder in that project if it was issued for the project. So it should not be looked at a debt instrument, but rather an ownership in that project, as I said. Those are mainly the issues that I wanted to cover from the previous speeches. Thank you, Mushtaq.
Thank you. I've just been told we've got 10 minutes for questions only, so we're very pushed for time, but we'll try our best. The importance of public policy, seems to be under stress in the whole Islamic finance debate. And we all know that without the requisite public policy in place, nothing happens in finance as in any other sector of governance. And we see now emerging two trends. One, this question of active sovereign Sukuk issuance program, which Governor Zeti, you referred to as usually the first entry into that market. But if you look at the landscape of issuing countries, there are not many sovereign issuers, especially from the OIC countries. So first of all, what needs to be done in that respect, and both in terms of public policy engagement and getting the right regulatory and legal frameworks and trust laws and all that in place. Of course, the IDB has issued, the ISIC has issued the Sukuk issuance program, insurance program to help sovereigns, especially below investment grade, to come to the market as well. On the other hand, from what Abdulaziz is alluding to, is that we need more, if you like, project-based Sukuk rather than sovereign. Perhaps he's alluding to local currency issuances in that respect as well, to if you like, tag into the demand for projects and infrastructure funding. I'd like your view on this, Dr. Sefi, if it's not. And also, if you'd like to respond to some of the points brought up by the two discussants.
Yes. Well, the public policy is vital for this, to provide the enabling environment. But secondly, amongst the corporate sector, amongst the private sector, is to have an awareness of what are the benefits and what are the advantages of issuing Sukuk, of financing projects via the Sukuk market. It requires understanding, it requires expertise. And those advisories, for example, solicitors, accounting firms, and all this, are the ones really who provide these advisory services over and above the financial intermediaries. And therefore, these are critical elements that will result in greater participation. But first of all, it's incumbent upon the financial intermediaries and all these auxiliary support services, professional services, to provide that, so that there would be greater interest of the ability of the Sukuk market really to meet the differentiated requirements of the different types of investments, and also the competitiveness. That means that, for example, the Sukuk that was issued by the United Kingdom was at par with the conventional issuances. Therefore, there's that advantage. We have competitive pricing, and these are the elements that is less known. So, yes, but I believe that after especially countries like the United Kingdom and Hong Kong, non-Islamic countries that have ventured into this space, it will result in future issuance going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Governor Kalimbetov, as a fairly new entry into the Islamic finance space and emerging market, what are the main challenges for jurisdiction like Kazakhstan in terms of taking the Sukuk proposition, beyond just this? You have a quasi-sovereign by the National Development Bank of Kazakhstan. What do you need as an emerging market in terms of technical assistance, in terms of market education, in terms of the infrastructure, to take this proposition forward?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. I think we're just on very early stage of development of Sukuk market. So I think locally, I think the main challenge is really infrastructure and legislation. So in order to really treat Islamic financing product, in order to be equal and competitive to the conventional finance, I think so we need some more amendments, and we're working now with Islamic Development Bank to amendments to the legislation just to bring the best conditions to the Islamic financial products. In terms of international activities, you know that the President Nazarbayev positioned Almaty like a regional financial center of Central Asia. So Central Asia, many years ago, was a global trade hub, and when they captured this value added from the trade of silk on an ancient Silk Road. And so right now we have a market of 70 million people. So the idea is to get these niches in Central Asia to position like a development of Islamic financing. In these terms, I think we will work very closely with our Malaysian colleagues in terms of open some window for the Sukuk development in our stock exchange, and really which really allow not only for the local but in more broader terms all our neighboring area to issue Sukuk bonds in Kazakhstan. And so in fact the Almaty is very well positioned to sell. We have a direct flight to Kuala Lumpur, we have a direct flight to Dubai, and I think so this also will cover it, the whole space of the Central Asia and CIS region.
Okay, thank you. Economic Secretary Andrea Lidson, UK, as you alluded to in your speech, has achieved a lot over the especially last year or so. And I'm very encouraged to hear about the WIEF guarantee, and also that the Bank of England is working on a Sharia-compliant facility. But as a non-Muslim sort of jurisdiction for Islamic finance, what do you think is the value added that Islamic finance can bring to the UK economy, not only in terms of the Muslim population there, but in terms of contributing to the economic growth of the UK and by extension other European countries? For instance, I can allude to the National Infrastructure Programme. Do you see the possibility of Sukuk being engaged in financing at least some aspects of that program? I mean, there was a lot of talk of Sukuk being involved in Crossrail, and there was a lot of disappointment that nothing happened in that respect. So where do you see, in other words, what I'm trying to ask is, what is the life after the first maiden UK Sukuk?
Well, thank you. We were delighted to issue our sovereign Sukuk. We wanted it to demonstrate our commitment in the UK to the further development of Islamic finance. So it's been an incredibly important marker for us. And of course, what we want to see is that Islamic finance begins to rank alongside conventional finance. So the pricing of it is incredibly important. As Governor Zeti mentioned, very important that the pricing is at par, and our sovereign Sukuk was issued at a price similar to to other sovereign issues. So that was very important to us. But where this goes in the future, we would like to see a broad range of financing capabilities in Islamic financing. So to include, as I mentioned, the development of Islamic insurance products. We're certainly very keen. We're in the market for some big investments in UK infrastructure. I mentioned a couple, but there have been some quite significant investments already, and there's much more to go. There's a great deal of appetite in the UK. But essentially what we want to do is to ensure that the UK becomes the Western hub for Islamic finance, much as the UK is a very important, if not the world's leading international financial centre. It's important to us that we look at all types of financing, and Islamic financing is therefore very important.
Thank you. Masood Ahmed, I get the impression that the IMF World Bank Group, the importance is very understated. I don't think they realize the importance in being the great enabler of the Islamic finance movement, because there are countries which are Muslim countries that are not really active in it, but perhaps they need some encouragement from a multilateral such as the IMF and that. In that respect, I believe the IMF has set up this consultative committee. Can you sort of expand a bit on that and perhaps a bit more where the IMF can be proactive, especially in terms of the financial stability aspects?
Absolutely. Let me just make one point first, if I might, quickly, which is that in terms of public policy you talked about, I think there are things that can be done relatively quickly and that are well identified. So it doesn't all have to wait for some long period to do. Simple things like how you record Sukuks in the budget. Simple things like having a tax regime that does not, that creates a level playing field between Sukuks and conventional bonds. The UK, Luxembourg, Hong Kong have actually modified their tax laws in a way that avoids double taxation. So I think there are things that can be done, and we need to be practical and pragmatic, country by country, to take that forward. Now, in terms of what the IMF can do more broadly, well, the IMF has been working with a lot of its members for a number of years now in providing training, policy advice, legal advice on technical issues relating to Islamic finance. What we are trying to do now is to actually use the opportunity of the development of the Islamic finance industry and the pace at which it's developing to help create a momentum, to contribute more to the global discussion and momentum. And that's why we've set up an international advisory group that actually has the benefit also of Abdulaziz as one of the members of it. But this international advisory group is working with our own staff in trying to define an IMF position on a variety of issues relating to Islamic finance, and also how we can contribute. And the angle, as I said earlier, for us is that we are not regulators, we are not financial market players, but we are the people who can help to bring together the Islamic finance industry and the mainstream and the financial sector, including Islamic finance, and the macroeconomic dimension, including the fiscal dimension, because linking the fiscal consequences and the fiscal rules for Islamic finance is a very important contribution that will help to advance this agenda.
Final word from you, very briefly.
Okay, in terms of public policy, I think the playing field is not leveled. There's a biasness to conventional finance and therefore to bonds over the years. But as we can see, there's an interest now from the international institutions such as the World Bank, the IMF, the other Western economies on Islamic finance. So hoping that this playing field will be more leveled. And I really call upon IDB member countries, the three of them who are members in the G20, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, and Turkey, to do something with the G20 in trying to mainstream Islamic finance into the agenda of the G20. That is a very important thing to do. In terms of IDB will continue to work closely with its member countries And I think we have achieved a lot in the past, whether for our own resource mobilization or for trying to reverse link what has been done in a good way in our member countries. I think Malaysia is an example. Now we have another example, which is Dubai, especially in terms of governance and the financial centers. So IDB will try to do its best to help its member countries in reverse linking those good examples. And IDB also have something to showcase investors, sovereign funds. IDB created a Sukuk fund that is now reached $2.5 billion. We are investing in Sukuk. We are very big investors in Sukuk. And the return in this fund is between 3 and 4%. And that proves the Sukuk investment in Sukuk is really very good, could produce a very good return in these turbulent markets. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, basically just a quick wrap up. We've heard about the potential role of Islamic finance and Sukuk towards contributing to financial stability and, of course, towards development, the challenges in infrastructure. And we haven't even mentioned social Sukuk and financial inclusion and the SRI Sukuk. So hope this will be an opportunity for some other forums in the future, because Sukuk, as you know, it's a huge, huge topic with huge potential and huge challenges as well. I'd like to thank our panelists, Governor Zeti, Governor Kalimbetov, Economic Secretary Andrea Linsom, Masood Ahmed from the IMF, and Abdulaziz Al-Hinai from the IDB. Thank them for their contributions and for the audience for your participation. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Your Highness, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, that marks the end of our first session.